Hello, everyone. It is so good to be with you, even if it's apart in this way. It still feels so wonderful. Welcome to the Art of Collective Care and Responsibility, handling images of Black suffering and death. My name is Tanya Autry, and I'm joining you today from the ancestral lands of the Erie and the Haudenosaunee peoples in the area that is at the moment known as Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a cultural organizer and the gun curator in residence at MoCA Cleveland. And some of you probably know me through an initiative that I co-produced with my friend Mike Morawski. It's called Museums Are Not Neutral. So I want to start today off with this welcome, and I thank everyone for being here today and waiting for me to, get all of this together. It's been a lot of work pulling this together. We have such a wonderful team, and this is just a really amazing thing. This is the first time I'm doing this. This is a new project of mine that I've launched called the Black Liberation Center, and this is the first teach-in in it. And so that's part of the, complications. Every time you have a new project, there's lots of things to figure out. But very, very exciting to do this. And I want to start off with a quote from one of my favorite artists and thinkers. This is from Toni Morrison. Some of you may recognize this. This is from an essay called Home. It's from a book named The House That Race Built from 1998. She's talking about her writing process, and she says, "My efforts were to carve away the accretions of deceit, blindness, ignorance, paralysis, and sheer malevolence embedded in race language, so that other kinds of perception were not only available, but were inevitable." So that's what this is about. I love that part. So that other kinds of perception were not only available, but were inevitable. So yeah, I want to keep that in mind as we get this wonderful talk going, thinking about what happens so often in the visual arts and visual culture in general, about how images are shared and racialized, how people are racialized, and how anti-Blackness is perpetrated through visual culture. And thinking about what it's like for some of us who do focus on care to push against forms of anti-Blackness and try to make a way so that other kinds of perception are not only available, but are inevitable. So yeah, as I said, this teach-in is the part one of my latest liberatory curatorial kind of projects. The Black Liberation Center is an experimental series of exhibitions, workshops, and programming spotlighting arts and culture that envision and strategize paths toward the freedom of all Black people, and thus all people. And I'm really glad you're here, because this gathering is an intervention, and I wanted this to feel like a community, that this is for us. What this is doing is, this Art of Collective Care and Responsibility is about considering the pivotal and conflicting roles of visual imagery. So we do know that, depictions of Black trauma have operated as a key factor in mobilizing protests against anti-Black state violence, as in the recent global uprisings in the wake of the May 25th, 2020 murder of George Floyd earlier this year by Minneapolis police. And at the same time, these images, when they're being shared, especially the videos, which kind of now operate seemingly like a new form of spectacle culture of Black death, when they're flooded through social media timelines, they reignite attention. They reignite the attention to the killings, but the proliferation of these images also traumatize Black people and even titillate those who harbor racist sentiments. So through this teaching, we're going to be considering what visual culture can do, what in particular, what the arts can do about changing and fighting against anti-Blackness, and what maybe the arts cannot do. And so what we're doing is working with studies of anti-Blackness and practices of care. And this teaching features brilliant, great souls like Miss Samaria Rice, who has joined us here. She also is here in Cleveland. Some of you may know, hopefully, Miss Samaria Rice. She is an activist. She is the mother of Tamir Rice. She founded the Tamir Rice Foundation in honor of her son. And I actually just want to read her bio and then invite Ms. Rice to share some remarks with us today. As a mother of social justice activist and the founder and CEO of the Tamir Rice Foundation, Ms. Samaria Rice proudly serves as an advocate for juvenile rights in Cleveland, Ohio. Since the murder of her 12-year-old son, Tamir, by the Cleveland police in 2014, Ms. Rice has committed her life to justice and standing on the front lines for children. Samaria's passion for civil rights reaches across lines of difference, uniting us all to work toward change. Following Tamir's death, Samaria has continued to use her voice in the service of her son's legacy. It encourages us to take back our communities by standing up for justice. She has become a motivating force for families and communities across the nation. She founded the foundation in 2016. The mission of the foundation is to invest in the growth and enrichment of children through the arts and create a world in which all children feel safe, nurtured, and valued, especially in their darkest times. She is active in the arts nationally and globally. She frequently collaborates with artists and art organizations on projects in response to the shooting of Tamir, state-sanctioned violence, and juvenile rights. Her biggest undertaking yet is the Tamir Rice Afrocentric Cultural Center, which will provide artistic, educational, and civic programs for youth while celebrating the history and culture of people of African descent. She was recently featured in Essence Magazine's 2019 Woke 100 list alongside changemakers such as Michelle Obama, Ava DuVernay, and Gayle King. So I would like to welcome Ms. Samaria Rice.
Hello. Sorry. I am multitasking over here. How's everybody? Glad to be a part of you all today. Just give me 1 second.
I'm glad to have you here today, Samaria. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, ma'am. So, you all heard a little bit about me, and so what am I doing these days? The first thing is that, the death of my son has changed my life. It has woke me up in the most horrific way. And I wanted to create the Tamir Rice Foundation to service the inner city children in our community with after school programming and other programs that they could benefit from. Knowing that America had sold me a lie, told me a lie, I truly believe that I was an American citizen and that I was going to get justice for the assassination of my son, which everyone's seen. And I did not want to continue to go on allowing America to continue to tell lies to our Black and brown children. So that's why I created the Tamir Rice Afro Cultural Center, and I purchased the whole building in Cleveland, Ohio. And now I'm in the parts of renovating the building. So can you all hear me pretty okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm still on the front lines advocating for police reform, whatever that may look for, as we continue to see the murders on a daily basis. I advocate for change in the community and for accountability and things like that. So I'm still busy. I'm still busy. I'm a single parent still, 3 children, 4 grandchildren, and I have multiple projects that I juggle with, and I have a small team that I work with and collab with many people around the country and in my community. Um, what I could say is that, this is, I never dreamed that I was going to be doing anything of this source. Um, and I just felt that I had to do something. I did not want to be quiet, and I wanted to turn my pain into some power, and I wanted to turn uh, my pain into something beautiful, um, to show others that. Can you all hear me? Somebody was sorry. I wanted to show others that no matter what, that you can still move forward and doing some things, if that's what you choose to do. I did realize in this situation that a lot of people, a lot of families are not strong enough to do the things. So we have people like myself and others and activists that speak up for the families and for the people, and that's actually doing the work in the community, which I always love to see. Can y'all hear me again? I'm sorry, my phone keep my phone keep ringing and ringing and ringing. I'm so sorry. I hope y'all can hear what I was saying.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. It just keep ringing. Um, I can appreciate folks like yourself and institutions like yourself that actually do the work and actually want to, work with the direct impacted victims and just um, honor what needs to be honored, as long as the families or the victims is comfortable. Unfortunately, I know I had some folks that wanted to do some things in my son's memory, and um, at the end of the day, if I'm not comfortable, I am not going to sign on to it. So just know my comfortability is everything to me, and if I'm not comfortable, I'm not going to sign on to it. So some things I'm allowed, some not allowed, but some things I collab to do and some things I choose not to do. But at the end of the day, it's about my comfortability and the death and assassination of my son, and how I want to honor him and how I want others to honor him as well. So I'm glad to, catch the things that I can catch and some things I can't catch. Uh, so I leave it up to folks to bring it to my attention, if they can. I'm on the phone. Bring them up to my attention and things like that.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Samaria, for sharing thoughts with us and being here today. And I wish you well. Of course, I'm really sorry for how a lot of things how things have come out. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, mostly with the murder of your son, um,
Mm-hmm.
and the lack of justice in this place that we're in, but also the continued violence that goes on, as well. Yeah, just I feel a lot for you and your family, and really for everybody who is unfortunately experiencing this kind of horrendous violence and anti-Blackness in this country. Um, wish you really well, and definitely support you in the foundation and what you're building with the Afrocentric Cultural Center here in Cleveland. I think that's going to be helping to make a big difference.
Thank you. I just want to say one more thing. If folks are not following us on social media, they can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Tamir Rice Foundation. It was Tamir's anniversary on the 22nd. We did a small campaign, $6 for 6 years, which did pretty good. And like I said, I always have various projects that's coming out of the woodworks, and we actually have a sign out there that said the Tamir Rice Afro Central Culture Center coming soon with AKA team and the Robert P. Madison Architects that has designed a beautiful design. And like I said, I'm in the process of getting some things remodeled. I'm over at the Cleveland Foundation. We're partners over there. I have a organizational fund, which it was a legacy fund, but we reached our goal, and now it's turned into an organizational fund. And I'm just putting some things out there. If people interested in or even want to get involved, they can email us at the Tamir Rice Foundation at Gmail. We're always looking for volunteers. I'm always building, and this is my life now. On top of other on top of other many things that I do, from traveling the world. Tamir also has a memorial over in Palestine. So I got different projects over the country and over the world, and like this is my life. So I just have to, take my time and pace myself and just do the work. So I thank y'all for wanting to hear my story and things like that. And if anybody needs to reach out to me, Latanya knows how to get in contact. I hope she's on here. She knows how to get in contact with me. But I'm on the front lines, and I'm always advocating for defund the police and things like that. Like, I'm not to be played with when it comes to the injustice in this country. And, right now, working in the community with the civilian oversight, we're trying to implement a civilian oversight in Cleveland, Ohio, which should go across the country for various cities, things like that. So I'm very much always involved, always on the front lines when it comes to the police. We want them to cease fire on Black and brown people. We have to exist first in order to go forward. So that's some things that I try to stand on, and definitely keep my foot on those people. I'm not gonna say neck, but keep keep my foot on their backs. Keep my foot on their backs for them to continue to do the right thing and make them uncomfortable at the end of the day. There's nothing comfortable but waking up to see another Black or brown person dead. There's nothing comfortable in America about that. And American people, we're living on edge. Black people are living on edge. Black American people are living on edge. Native American, whatever, wherever culture you are right now, we're living on edge for the most part. So I
I,
just want to say thank you.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm not gonna stay long, you all. I'm multitasking here. Did you all still need me?
Oh, you're welcome to stay as long as you can. I understand that you got a lot going on. Thank you for joining us today
Yes,
and sharing
ma'am.
all this work you're doing. And yes, let's all support you in this work and this fight, right? Let's just keep fighting. And yes, thank you, Miss Rice, for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Sending
Okay, I hope everybody enjoy the rest of their night. Thanks again. Like I said, Tanya know how to get in contact with me if
Yes, yes, I'll share your contact information. Thank you, Samaria. You
okay,
have a
thank
good day.
you.
So next, I'd like to actually welcome Dr. Aimee Meredith. Hi, hi there. So that was really wonderful to hear Miss Rice, have her kind of pop in to join us. Next, I would like to actually welcome Dr. Aimee Meredith Cox, who will lead us in a meditation. So this gathering does have some moments of breathing here, because you can tell this is going to be a heavy event. But we do have Dr. Aimee Meredith Cox. She is an associate professor in the departments of African American Studies and Anthropology at Yale University. Her research and teaching interests lie in the intersection of anthropology, Black studies, and performance studies. She is a former professional dancer, and she has an ethnographic project coming up called Living Past Slow Death. It explores the creative protest strategies individuals and communities enact to reclaim Black life in the urban United States. So, Dr. Cox, will you please join us? Thank you for being
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm just still kind of, marinating on Miss Rice's words, and it's an honor to share space with all of you. I'm looking and seeing that there's over 400 people here. And so what I thought we would do to kind of officially welcome all of us to this virtual space, to welcome us into the space of our bodies, in the space of our hearts, that we'll just kind of move together through a brief meditation. And I'll do that with you. And so the first thing that I would like to ask of you, if you're standing, you can stay standing if that feels good in your body. If you're sitting in a chair like I am, please stay in your chair. If you're on the floor, stay on the floor. But the only things that are really important for this beginning is that if you're standing, I want you to really feel your feet on the ground. If you're in a chair, can you sit a little more forward? Or maybe that's just me because I'm short, but sit in a way that you can feel your feet connecting to the floor. Okay, and so if you have on shoes, even if you have on shoes, try to spread your toes and feel your foot connecting through your shoes to the earth, to the ground, and imagine yourself kind of rooting through your feet. And then through your seat, if you're sitting, feel the roots of your seat rooting into the floor or to the chair that you're seated in. And then from that strong base, feel your spine kind of freed up and long, crown of your head kind of freely floating to the ceiling. Let's take a deep breath together through the nose, as slow as you can. Slow inhale through the nose, like you're just kind of like measuring out the breath. Feel that breath, feel your body. And then when you come to the top of your inhale, let the exhale be a slow sipping out of your mouth, like you're blowing out a candle, just a slow. Do that one more time. Take your time as slow as you can. Draw in air through your nose. And as you do that, see if you can feel your spine get a little bit longer. Hold on at the top. And even slower than the inhale, try to exhale just a soft blowing through the lips and a settling down. And then just come into your natural organic breath, wherever that is in this moment. Let your face relax. So let the space between your brows, let that soften and relax. You might notice that your jaw is a little bit tense. You might even move your face around a little bit and just bring some ease into the face. And with that sense of ease in the face, let your eyelids get heavy. So you don't have to close your eyes, but you can. You can just kind of lower your gaze. But with this softening through the face, let that carry to the eyelids so that you soften your gaze. And start to bring your attention inward, bringing your energy inward, back to yourself. And without changing the breath, I'm just going to ask us to feel it, to feel its pathway, to feel where it's traveling through the body, and to also notice the difference in what you feel between your inhale and your exhale. And so we can use our breath. We can use our breath as a tool to evaluate how we're doing, where we are, how we're feeling. And so let's try that together now, just paying close attention to what the breath feels like in the body and see what we notice. And so without judgment or needing to fix or shift anything, just noticing what you feel through paying attention to your breath. You might notice where there's some spaciousness in the body. Maybe on the inhale, you feel some space opening up. You might notice places in the body where the breath feels like it gets stuck a little bit, a little crunchy spaces. It's all good. Just breathe into everything, letting the breath freely travel. And then keep your face soft, keep your eyelids heavy or your eyes closed. And bring one of your hands just to your heart. And kind of move it around a little bit so you can find a place where you really feel the heart beating into your palm. And then take that other hand and just place it right below your belly button, kind of cupping your low belly. And as you continue to breathe here, feel the breath rise to meet your hands as you inhale. And feel your chest and your belly kind of recede a little bit from your palms as you exhale. So with this breath here, and with the hands on the body, let the feeling of your own touch be comforting, be grounding, be centering. And with the rise and fall of your breath, feeling your own touch and feeling the expansiveness of your breath in your body. You might even be able to feel the rhythm of your heart beating into your palm, the ebb and flow of your breath. And throughout this day, throughout the days to come, I want to invite you to remember that you always have access to these two grounding fundamental rhythms: the rhythm of your heartbeat and the rhythm of the ebb and flow of your breath. If you feel tense, if you feel like you're starting to shrink and feel small, if you feel nervous or anxious or unsettled, you can try this for yourself, just letting the face relax, coming into the breath, placing your own hands on your body and breathing life into your palms, and comforting yourself with your own touch. Take a few more cycles of breath here. See if you can make them really generous breaths, really full, feeling the vitality of life through the breath, filling up your body. And the softening on the exhale, settling into your seat. Keep your hands on your body. If your eyes are closed, you can just kind of flutter your eyes back. We are here. We are love. We radiate love. We receive love. We are here. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your time together. And remember, you always have access to grounding yourself through the breath, through the attention to the breath.
Thank you so much, Aimee. That was really beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Aimee will be back and be sharing these kind of meditative moments with us. So thank you. I know you're moving on, but we're gonna keep going over here with some energy as well. Thank you, Aimee. We'll see you tomorrow. I would like to introduce my friend and colleague, Kijo Lee. She is actually joining me as a co-moderator, and Kijo is here, and I want to just read her bio real quick, and then she will go on to introduce our keynote speaker today. So Kijo Lee's scholarly and pedagogical practice features an ethos of looking that privileges materiality as an arbiter. I'm having trouble today, y'all. You're gonna have to be patient with me. An arbiter of meaning. She is a scholar of American art and African American studies, curator, critic, and leads the Department of Academic Affairs at the Cleveland Museum of Art. In her work at the museum, Kijo has focused on developing multiple projects and programs that create interdisciplinary curricular connections to the CMA's collection for faculty and students. She is completing a dissertation entitled Precarious Matters, Photography and Blackness. Thank you, Kijo, for being here.
Thank you. And I also want to thank Dr. Cox, you, Tanya, every one of the panelists, as well as the audience. And I also just want to take a moment to honor both the gratitude and the pain that was expressed by Ms. Rice, as well as that which is being expressed in the chat. And so what I will say is I couldn't be more delighted to introduce you to an author whose work I found allows me to truly savor words, to sort of roll them around in my mouth, turn them about in my hands, dig into their depths with my fingers and toes in order to apprehend the world anew. Dr. Christina Sharpe, who's a writer and professor of humanities at York University. Dr. Sharpe is the author of 2 books, In the Wake on Blackness and Being from Duke University Press in 2016, and a personal favorite of mine. It's a book that's transformed my own scholarship in really beautiful ways, and Monstrous, Intimacies, Making Post-Slavery Subjects from 2010. And she's currently working on 2 eagerly awaited monographs, Ordinary Notes, which will be published in 2022, and Black Still Life. And with that, I ask you to welcome Dr. Christina Sharpe.
Can you all hear me fine? Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm going to read, and let me share screen first to make sure I don't forget. Okay, you can see the screen okay? Yeah, okay. Oops, but something's happening. So, okay, great. So let me start again with a good afternoon to everyone. When Tanya Autry asked me to speak, I hesitated, but only because I needed to decide when and how close to the end of the semester, because saying no to someone whose work I so respected wasn't really an option. So thank you for the invitation. And thank you, Ms. Rice, for your opening remarks and for your ongoing work. As she said, we have to exist in order to go forward, which reminds me of, quote, we cannot live without our lives. And thank you, Aimee Meredith Cox, for your wonderful meditation and reminding us that we can comfort ourselves and the work of breathing. So I'm joining you from Toronto, and I'll begin with an acknowledgement of the violent histories of where we are. An acknowledgement of the ongoing conflicts and contradictions of this land, this water, this air. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit River, and the nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. The meeting place of Toronto remains the home to Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. Our intersecting communities are comprised of those native to this land, Indigenous people from other territories, as well as white conquistador settlers, to use Tiffany Latabo King's framing, and those people who have come here by force or otherwise as a result of slavery, colonialism, imperialism, and ongoing wars. These Americas are built on violence and erasure, and we bring these histories with us when we enter any room, and we must bring them into view. With this knowledge of history, we enter here in the hopes of making a different world. These are ongoing, difficult times when sometimes any task feels like too much. So I'm doubly and trebly thankful for the work of Tanya, Kijo Lee, Thea Spittle, Aimee Meredith Cox, Fay Victor, Samaria Rice, the Black Liberation Center, and everyone else involved in the art of care and collective responsibility. I'm grateful for this manifestation of your collective, expansive imaginations. So this is a talk with a brief preface and 3 parts in which I will return to some work that may be familiar to some of you, but because I work incrementally and sort of methodically sometimes, it's still new and there are new parts. So, preface. In the aftermath of Eric Garner's murder, Ross Gay wrote the following poem, A Small Needful Fact. Is that Eric Garner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticultural Department, which means, perhaps, that with his very large hands, perhaps in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants which, most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow, continue to do what such plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe. Gay's poem turns us to a needful, a necessary fact of Mr. Garner's life, in which he worked for some time for the Horticultural Department. Needful and necessary because with this fact, we are turned from how Mr. Garner was murdered and the endless repetition of that murder across all forms of screens, to his life. Gay said, quote, "What that poem is trying to do is to say there's this beautiful life, which is both the sorrow and the thing that needs to be loved," end quote. This attention to Black life and to what we make in the midst of all of the forces arrayed against us subtends any work of collective care and curation and is a particular kind of responsibility. Part 1, Hand and Jar. 3 epigraphs. My gran told me when you do things with your hands, it heals you in places lower than from where you cry from. Them deep spaces, dimples in Keisha Ray Witherspoon's short film, Tea. That we outlast our forms means that we are called by different names: child, woman, dirt, mud, ocean, Aracelius Germain, the Black Mariah. If given the hand, dig, Kinesia Lubrin, return number 36, the Dysgraphist. So when I first saw the jars of soil from the Equal Justice Initiative's Community Remembrance Project, I was compelled by them. Compelled by this part of the EJI's project that sought to commemorate known Black victims of spectacle lynching through the collective work of soil collection. Community members were invited to collect into jars soil from sites where Black people were lynched, from Tennessee to the eastern shore of Maryland. Many people answered that call. The jars filled with soil are of a uniform size, clear glass, gallon size, and they have a black screw top lid. The soil's different colors and types depending on the organic matter content, mineral content, and the amount of oxygen and the amount of weathering. So weathering is both the breaking down of soil through the contact with the Earth's atmosphere, water, etc. And it's also the term that Arlene Geronimus devised in order to describe the particular long-term deleterious effects of anti-Blackness on Black women in particular. So there's visible organic matter in the soil, like leaves and twigs. And there are, as Lyndon Gill once encouraged me to think about, of course, matter living and dying in it, organisms both visible and invisible to the eye. So every jar is labeled with the city or town, state, month, day, and year of a lynching. And some jars are labeled with the first and last names of the person who was lynched, or a line in place of a first name and then a surname, or unknown. Some of the jars are grouped together to indicate when multiple people were lynched on the same day and in the same place. These 5 jars hold dirt gathered from the site where Paul Hill, Paul Archer, Will Archer, Emma Fair, and Ed Guyton were shot to death by a white mob in Carrollton, Alabama on September 14th, 1893. Black people, in other words, were lynched in groups made up of friends, neighbors, strangers, families, people known and unknown to each other, all swept up in white violence. This slide shows soil collected into 4 jars on the site where 4 members of the Cross family were lynched by a mob of white men. Jim Cross was shot in the doorway of their home, and his wife and their children were murdered inside the home. The first and the surname of Jim Cross is recorded here, but the given names of his wife and their 2 children, a boy and a girl, remain unrecorded. The Cross family were lynched after Jim Cross condemned an earlier eruption of white mob violence and the lynching of another Black man in Ledahatchee, Alabama in 1900. The soil color and texture change from location to location, but the jars and therefore the fact of the lynching repeat. And it's clear that the violence multiplies. It's also clear that even when the word unknown appears or a line appears in the place of a name, the line is not the violence of the fungibility represented in the plantation ledger and ship manifest by the ditto or the Negro man, Negro girl, meager girl. The abstract and material fact of these jars filled with soil refuses to repeat the terror of the almost endlessly recirculated image of the brutalized body of the Black person. The abstraction of the body with the soil and the labeling does not repeat, nor does it refuse the violence that Zakiya Iman Jackson has so compellingly described as plasticity. But what kinds of knowledge does the continued circulation of the results of the brutality in the form of the body produce? So we hear that we need to keep seeing these images in order for us to understand something. But perhaps the better question is, for whom does this circulation produce knowledge? And to what end are those who are gathered under that plural we or that us supposed to need to continue to see and circulate the body of the brutalized to death Black person? Perhaps the collected soil asks or requires that we attend to this differently. Perhaps it asks that following Amber Musser, we quote, probe the relationship between representation and knowledge production, end quote. So there are numerous EJI videos, and I've shown you a few screen grabs from some of them, of volunteers collecting soil. This one is of Mr. Anthony Ray Hinton collecting soil in Montgomery, Alabama, from the site where Joe Souls was lynched. Holding in his hands the jar that he has just filled with soil, Mr. Hinton speaks to Joe Souls. He says, "I hope your body is at peace and you are at peace. I came here today so that I can hopefully get your DNA and take it to a place where it will be respected and not leave your DNA on this roadside," end quote. Past and present meet here as Mr. Hinton, an exoneree who spent 28 years on death row and who was represented by Brian Stevenson, speaks to the spirit of Joe Souls. In The Guardian, in an op-ed piece, Mr. Hinton writes, quote, "I had to watch 54 men walk past to be executed. My cell was 30 feet from the chamber and I could smell the burning flesh. There were 22 who took their own life," end quote. Mr. Hinton has been, to quote Colin Dion, held in the body of the state. What makes the soil collection project so powerful and generative, at least in my thinking, is that it's a collecting and a holding of history and matter and grief. What does soil as living archive teach us, not as a claim to country or state or nation or progress, but as material, as sedimented living matter, as matter with a memory? The holding of matter and memory is an act of care, in opposition to how Mr. Hinton was held in the body of the state, or the holdings of bones and matter, that holding of mementos by those people who participated in lynchings. Those people who were collectors of hair, teeth, bone, clothing, and then photographs of those people they brutally murdered. What the EJI and the volunteers have done through the collection of soil, and by collection, I mean both the verb and the noun, the digging, pouring, tamping down, the act of touch, the hand collecting the soil into jars, as well as their holding, is work that's counter to that other holding, which is violently white supremacist and anti-Black. The soil is a powerful medium. It holds the living and the dead. And it's the fact of the collection of the soil that seems to me to enact care, as Saidiya Hartman says, as an antidote to violence. The fact of the collection, but not its installation, it seems to me as well, in the Legacy Museum. Because in its installation in the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, it's installed so that on one side, it's flanked by those videos that show photographs of the brutalized to death Black person. But because of the conditions under which the jars of soil have been installed in the museum, the intense light and heat, there's been condensation in many of the jars, and some new life has begun to grow. And I'm not sure if the curators anticipated or intended for those changes to occur in the soil. From my conversations with them, I think perhaps not. But the changes get at something important that I'm trying to think about Black still life, about soil memory, and the spaces where, despite everything, something like Black life or Black livingness might take hold. I think this is a matter of curation and time and care. Tina Campt teaches us in listening to images that the haptic is not merely a question of physical touch. It is the link between touch and feeling, as well as the multiple mediations we construct to allow or prevent our access to these affective relations. So what if there were no displays in the Legacy Museum of photographs of lynched Black people? What if the monoliths at the Memorial for Peace and Justice weren't hanging? What if the project, or a project, but not one for Black people, was to locate each of those white people who appear so readily in these lynching photographs, to identify them and their families? A little gnat is flying around me. To identify them and their families, to link their actions, their wealth accumulation, their possession of land, their possessive investment in whiteness, to that past and this present. What if the inquiry functioned like the legacies of British slave ownership project that attended to those people who had once claimed ownership over other people and their strategies of evasion and disavowal that have continued into the present? Might that not be a different project altogether? Might that not indicate another kind of care, force other implications, reflections, and reparations? Because as my colleague, the curator, Professor Andrea Fatona asked when I showed her my photographs of the sites, can you be Black and stand there? The soil, though, offers instruction, and those entanglements of soil and the social, as Raina Martins calls them, I take as an invitation and an opportunity to imagine. Likewise, a series of paintings that Torkwasi Dyson made in 2015, titled Strange Fruit, Blue Note, that became part of a show called On Keeping. And like the EJI, which hopes to transcend time and altered terrain to bear witness, Dyson too is interested in time, in witness and terrain, and in her painterly practice, time and care are evident, for instance, in the amount of work it takes to build up a canvas with layers of paint, mesh, cotton, and graphite, as well as the care and time it takes to research a life and a subject. Time and care are also evident in her language of shape that attends to what a Black being might see and experience and imagine in certain conditions of confinement, like the hold of a ship or a space that is 3 by 9 by 7. In the series are 2 paintings that are side by side. They're black and white acrylic paintings on board titled He period, She period, and She period, He period. And I think the title provides a clue for how to read these paintings in which Dyson takes up the story of a couple who were lynched. Her data visualization project is not abstracted violence. It's a bird's eye view of people, places, environments. And it enacts what Dyson says is a way to, quote, unkeep the way in which that history was documented. So viewed from above and composed of hundreds or perhaps thousands of Black circles, grids, lines, and other architectural elements, he, she, and she, he are, as I've said, built up over time, layer upon layer. And it seems to me that this is a process that reproduces in the work and by her hand how a life is built up over time. And it's a process that works both to see and to make Blackness in relation to other Black people, environment, etc. These works have depth and density, and through their perspective, they offer a different look at the more than 4,000 spectacle lynchings that are also the subject of the Equal Justice Initiative's projects. Dyson says, each circle you see is a symbol of a tree, but as I make a circle, as I make these marks, as I make these paintings, I am acutely aware that I am reorganizing my own relationship to the history of that photographic culture, my own relationship to contemporary history as it pertains to representation, and my own relationship to data visualization, end quote. So in those repetitions, as I make a circle, as I make these marks, as I make these paintings, my own relationship again and again, I think Dyson refuses what those lynching photographs make. She refuses a pedagogy of cruelty. She refuses what she calls, quote, a method of didactic trauma. That violence, after all, is not our record. This is the violent imaginary of the murderers that we have been subjected to. It is not ours. Why should we repeat it? Our imaginary is quite different. And it is that different imaginary that activates she, he, and he, she, 2 paintings that are compelled, as I've said, at least in part by Dyson's interest in a couple's shared life, their fact of a coming child, in lives that were lived before the onset of this particular manifestation of white violence. The couple that Dyson is imagining are sharecroppers, and the husband, who had not been paid, approached the landowner to claim the wages that were due to him. And he was lynched after asking for that money, which is to say that he was lynched because he was Black and available to be brutalized. The man's wife, who was 6 months pregnant at the time, went looking for her husband when he did not return. She is lynched after asking after him. And the circles, which are trees in these paintings, are saturated. They're built up with markings over time. And so they arrive, it seems to me, at different scales. and they evince a practice of representation and a meditation on a repeating problem. Dyson says, how do we record these histories of death, but not record these histories of love? And so Dyson wanted to imagine and to explore the space and no space between this couple. She was interested in what can be known and what can't be known, interested, she says, in breath and lips. So these paintings are another kind of data visualization, and I've been thinking of them as a kind of heat map in which the circles indicate not only the trees from which thousands of Black people were hung, but the spaces where this couple interacted with their environment and where the environment changed them and they it. The trees they perhaps stood under for relief from the heat, or perhaps to rest and talk, or perhaps to think or to have a moment of solitude or togetherness. The places in the painting where the paint runs and the circles overlap, maybe we could imagine as those spaces where the man and the woman embrace or kiss or touch, spaces where they worked the land and rested and moved. The two paintings offer us different points of view of their time together in geographic space. Dyson's project then is both a visualization of Ida B. Wells's work mapping lynchings and undoing the narratives of Negro violence, and a kind of Hartmanian critical fabulation, an exploration in abstract form of what can be measured and what cannot be measured, but what might nevertheless be known. They are, as Dyson also tells us, a meditation on Wells's travel and her resistance to terror lynching. For Dyson, these kinds of abstractions are a rubric and not a destination. She's re-articulating a history and a past that's not yet passed through the languages of architecture. She says, quote, I decided to make paintings and drawings that reconfigured that history of murders and tortures in a way that was diametrically opposed to images in photography. And I did this so that I would unkeep that history, end quote. She is unkeeping history, and this is a practice of forensic care. 2, flower. I wonder if I can make a painting that has impact, where the picture can make you turn away, but the painter's touch could make you turn towards it. Jennifer Packer. So Jennifer Packer's canvases are filled with care. They're made with what seems to me a forensic attention to where the histories of painting meet the textures of a particular life. Her floral still lifes differ in arrangement, color, and composition. Some of the flowers that she paints are without stems and leaves. Some flowers appear to hover, fragile, untethered, weightless, but still present and particular. When I see these paintings, I feel Alice Smith singing. I think I'm obsessed with Alice Smith. Or to borrow from Roy DeCarava, something like the sound that I saw when I look at these paintings is the way in which Smith moves the listener, not just in the words she sings, but the sounds and the way she sings them. And like Smith's singing, Packer's paintings move us through beauty's sorrow and possibility. They seem attentive to what is weighty and to what transforms weight. And these floral still lifes, minus the kinds of cellophane wrapping, are not unlike those bouquets that mourners leave at sites where a person has died, often by violence. And Packer has painted multiple and different still lifes because, of course, these murders repeat. Packer paints this painting, Say Her Name, in 2017, because she's haunted by the death of Sandra Bland. But the painting is neither a substitute, neither a replacement nor a substitute for the body of the person who has died. It's not synecdoche. Packer says, quote, but when you go to a funeral, the flowers aren't a stand-in for the body. They're a stand-in a way for desire and consideration. They're a beautification, and we wouldn't call them unnecessary attributes at a funeral. You wouldn't call the lilies on a casket decadent, right? You would just say, this can't even match what I've lost. There's something about painting and funeral decoration that feels like there's a kinship there, end quote. So this painting does not represent Bland. It is a way instead for the painter to process the grief that she feels for a stranger, a way to make sense of the inexplicable that is her own sense of loss. The funerary here becomes a space of consideration that suggests not only personal loss, but political loss. I think the Packers' still lifes are filled with abundant light, a light that seems to emerge from within and wash over the flowers and the surface of the painting. The color and the light transport us to a place beyond ordinary seeing. All of Packer's work is lit this way by her care-filled and tender imagination. 3. Collective. And when I tell you, you mine, I also mean I'm yours. Toni Morrison, beloved. So finally, I turn very briefly to Jitovia Gary's The Giverny document, which attends to the forces within and against which Black women live. The film begins with the song, How Can I Lose? And is followed by Jocelyn Hernandez saying, what the fuck? Can I live? Can I live? Can I fucking live? So the eyes of how can I lose and can I live are individual and also collective, and they connect the strands of the film, the archival footage, the Black girls, teens, and women who Gary interviews on 116th Street in Harlem, and who she asks, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe in your body and in general in the world? Questions that most of the teenagers and younger women answer with no, while the older women tend to say yes and to attribute that safety to faith. Though when pushed, many of them also note the conditions of their unsafety. So there's one moment when Gary, who appears in Harlem wearing a wig, but also in the lush Monet Gardens in Giverny, France, without a wig, is interviewing an older woman who says that she's from Guyana originally, but has lived in New York for many years, when they're interrupted by 3 teenage boys. Gary admonishes them and says something like, what's wrong with you? And there's an elder here. But the older woman looks after them, unfazed, and says, you know how the young people are. And I think about this moment that they're both right. And in that moment is so much of the heart of the film, the complexity of safety, understanding, regard, and demand. Also central to the film, of course, is Diamond Reynolds' recording of the murder of her partner, Philando Castile, her scream, her concern for his life and her daughter. But we do not see his murder. Instead, we see Reynolds, the police, we see these blue bars over the sky, over leaves. We see abstract shapes and plant matter a la Stan Brakhage. Then there's Nina Simone at the Montreux Jazz Festival in 1976, about to see feelings. And this is a split screen with the image of the leaf and Simone. And she interrupts the song by saying, God damn, what a shame to have to write a song like that. I don't mean to make the songwriter mad, but I do not believe the conditions that produced a situation that demanded a song like that. And with that, Simone changes the entire meaning of the song. Gary's film is a beautiful film. And as Dion Brand tells us, beauty is not uncomplicated. Beauty is the ability to see everything, to confront everything. Gary's, quote, multi-textured cinematic poem that meditates on the safety and bodily autonomy of Black women, end quote, is her intentional and painstaking layering of image and sound that makes tangible her hand, that makes tangible that this project is one shaped through and with humor and love, with a visual and sonic aesthetic of care that's hard. And when I tell you, you mine, I also mean I'm yours. This is art of collective care. And to return to the words with which LaTanya started, Morrison's words, to make the work, to make visible in the work other kinds of to make other kinds of perceptions, not only perceptible, but inevitable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina, for that gorgeous and illuminating talk. I would like to make sure to, again, honor your words, to honor that notion of a holding, and to think about that holding of matter, right? So everything and every representation that you demonstrated showed that matter as meaning or something of import, matter as something of having mass, but also matter in a 19th century sense of something that emits from a wound, something, this way of grappling, right, with that wounding, but also how that wounding is wrapped up in pleasure and joy. And now I'd like to move us into our next moment by introducing Fay Victor. So thank you so much again, Christina. So Fay is a Brooklyn, New York-based sound artist and composer. She hones a unique vision for the vocalist role in jazz and improvised music. Her everything is everything aesthetic permeates her work in performance, where a song leads to free improvisation and back again. Victor's released 10 critically acclaimed albums as a leader, and her 11th release as a leader, We've Had Enough, with her improvising quartet Sound Noise Funk. Fay is set for release in 2020 on ESP Disc. Victor is currently on the faculty of the New School of Jazz and Contemporary Music in New York. And with that, I give you Fay Victor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's I just want to, can everyone hear me? Yeah, thank you. It's a honor to be here and an honor to be included in such an important discussion around Black care. I'm going to just present a small musical excerpt of a piece I actually have been developing since the beginning of the pandemic, when we were all my performances were canceled like everyone else. I started actually this project in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. And I just kind of wanted to kind of bring in a different narrative. And so I decided to start this project called Black is Beautiful, where I sort of bring in different, some things are text-based. I'm gonna just do an excerpt here. Something that's text-based and something, one song out of this program, and an improvisation. And there was just ways to kind of highlight what I think is beautiful about being Black and of Black culture. And yeah, and I think in different ways. So when I was really fortunate to speak with Tanya the other day, I was happy that she, thought that what I wanted to try for today would be totally appropriate, and I hope you enjoy. I'm going to start out with a text-based piece, and this is based on found text on some words of the great Muhammad Ali, and this is found text of a conversation of an interview that he was in 1971 on the BBC with a British journalist by the name of Michael Parkinson. It's a lengthy interview, it's about 60 minutes long, but I'm focusing on a very specific question that was asked by the journalist, which was, why did Cassius Clay become Muhammad Ali, or why did he become a Muslim? Muhammad Ali sort of answered this question at length, and I've actually made this his answer a performative piece. When I went to church on Sundays, I've always been one to, I'm not just a boxer. I do a lot of reading, a lot of studying. I ask questions. I'll go out, I'll travel these countries, and I watch how their people live, and I learn. And I always ask my mother, I said, Mama, how come is everything white? I said, why is Jesus white with blonde hair and blue eyes? And why is the Lord's Supper all white men angels are white, the Pope, Mary, and even the angels. I said, Mother, when we die, do we go to heaven? She said, naturally we go to heaven. I said, well, what happened to all the black angels? They took the pictures. I said, oh, I know. If the white folks is in heaven too, then the black angels were in the kitchen preparing the milk and honey. She said, listen, you quit saying that, boy. I was just always curious. And I always wondered why I had to die to go to heaven. Why couldn't I have pretty cars and good money and nice homes now? Why did I have to wait till I died to get milk and honey? So, like I said, I was always curious. I always wondered why Tarzan is the king of the jungle in Africa, and he was white. I saw this white man swinging around Africa with a diaper on, hollering. Did you all see Tarzan over there? And all of the Africans, he's beating them up and breaking the lion's jaw, and here's Tarzan talking to the animals. And the Africans have been there for centuries, and they can't talk to the animals. Only Tarzan can talk to the animals. And I always wondered why. And Miss America was always white. And all the beautiful brown women in America, beautiful suntans, beautiful shapes, all types of complexions, but she was always white. And Miss World was always white. And Miss Universe was always white. And they got some stuff called White House cigars, white swan soap, king white soap, white cloud tissue paper, white rain earrings, white tornado floor wax. Everything was white. And the angel fruit cake was the white cake, and the white cake was the devil food cake was the chocolate cake. And I said, Mama, why is everything white? I just always wondered why. And the president lived in the White House, and Mary had a little lamb with feet as white as snow, and the snow white, and everything was white. Santa Claus was white, and everything bad was black. The little ugly duckling was the black duck, and the black cat was the bad luck, and if I threaten you, I'm going to blackmail you. I said, Mama, why don't they call it white mail? They lied too. I was always curious. And then this is when I knew something was wrong. I won the Olympic gold medal in Rome, Italy. Olympic champion. I'm defeating America's so-called threats and enemies, and the flag is going, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? I'm standing so proud, and I would have whooped the world for America. I took my gold medal. I thought I'd invented something. I said, man, I know I'm going to get my people freedom. I'm the champion of the whole world. I know I can eat downtown now. And I went downtown that day, had my big gold medal on, and I went on in a restaurant. And that time, things weren't integrated. Black folks couldn't eat downtown, and I went downtown anyway, and I sat down and I said a cup of coffee and a hot dog. And the lady said, well, we don't serve Negroes. And I was so mad, I said, well, I don't eat them either. Just give me a hot dog and a cup of coffee. You know, I said, I'm the Olympic gold medal winner. I won 3 days. I fought for this country in Rome. I won the gold medal, and I'm going to eat. And I heard her tell the manager, and he said, well, he's got to go out. They put me out. I had to leave that restaurant in my hometown where I went to church to serve in their Christianity. My daddy fought in all the wars, and I just won the gold medal, and I couldn't eat downtown. I said, something is wrong. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. And from then on, I've been a Muslim. Forgive me if I seem to preach, but there is something that I want to say, a message that I hope will reach people who are throwing life away. I call it my philosophy, and that is why I pass it on to you, because it works so well for me and helps me get away from strife. I hope you listen carefully. They say the truth will make you free, and that's the way you wanna be. 'Cause brother, this is your life. Long as you're living, always remember, time is for spending, but there's an ending. While you are sleeping, lifetime is creeping. Wake up and taste it, foolish to waste it. Sample and savor all of its flavor, long as you're living. Long as you're living, always remember, folks who are lazy are playing crazy. Better keep on moving, keep on improving. You won't be hurried after you're buried. Oh, live every minute, put yourself in it, long as you're living. Long as you're living, always remember, you'll never be life. Don't try to cheat life. All in our brothers, do unto others. Love our lust for enjoying, hate for destroying. Live every minute, put yourself in it, long as you're living. Yeah. Forgive me if I seem to preach, but there was something that I had to say, a message that I hope will reach people who are throwing life away. I call it my Creative folks, we who keep our perspective just far enough to see, keep creating, keep creating. The creation is connection, and the contact feels like love, remembering what is true in all of us. We need each other. We are the last revolutionary act. Creative folks. Thank you.
Fay, that was really beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled that I, was introduced to you recently and you turned out to be the perfect person for our program today. And I think this is so lovely what you did of bringing us again back to our bodies and thinking about, living in this moment, right? Live this life that we have. Thank you for that. It's just so beautiful to think about your words in relationship to everything today with Professor Christina Sharpe's beautiful, address, which is her work has forever helped me to imagine my way beyond the anti-Blackness of the museums and the academy, this world. Aimee Meredith Cox's words, really feeling our power in our bodies, right? The pain that Miss Samaria Rice is going through, but how she continues to keep on going and keep fighting for justice. So today has been amazing. I feel so honored that I can be in this space, this virtual space with all of these wonderful, good hearts and good minds. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I do want to thank, of course, Kijo, my friend and colleague who's been supporting me on this journey through the Academy of Museums as well. And of course, all the wonderful people on our production team. So many great people. I'm just going to say their names quickly. Taya Spittle, Lauren Leving, Melissa Kansky, Jennifer Cox, and Corey Dakin. This is a project of the Black Liberation Center. It's in association with MoCA Cleveland and the Cincinnati Contemporary Arts Center. We will be continuing this. This is this is an ongoing activity. We will be back tomorrow for our first roundtable. We will have, our speakers will be Dr. Christina Sharpe, so she'll be back. Alexandra Bell, artist. William C. Anderson, writer, art critic. Dr. Kirsten P. Buick, another wonderful professor and thinker. Aimee Meredith Cox will be back to do meditation with us. We will have another musical guest, Casey Barget, Cleveland artist here. He will be sharing some music. And Kijo will be back co-moderating with me. We are recording the session. So this session today and also our roundtables are going to be recorded, or they are being recorded, and they will be shared later on our website. So artofcollectivecare.com. Please be back. This is an ongoing journey. I really feel so honored to do this with everybody. This is about love. This is about us loving ourselves. Not everybody loves us. We know that, right? Because anti-Blackness is just the ground that we walk on, as Professor Christina Sharpe has talked about. But some of us do this work of deep care. And this is about us speaking with one another and helping others to find their way too, to articulate that work so we can grow this network of care, so we can just make this world better, right? Let's keep doing it. And thank you, everybody, for being here today, and hope to see you tomorrow, 2:30 Eastern time. And yeah, and the roundtable title is Black Trauma, Death Imagery is Always Spectacle. So hope to see you tomorrow. Goodbye. Thank you.